So we finally see the very first support wave for set 5, which gave us a brand new ride line, the return of the plant tokens, and also the dual nation cards, or should I say card, which also isn't really a dual nation, or at the very least, there's no real point for it to be dual nation, but you understand that once we go into this video. So let's talk about all of that. Stand up, Vanguard! Hey Cardfighters, welcome back to another Cardfight update, and yes, I know this video is a little bit late. I was very busy this last few weeks or days or whatever you want to say, but I've been busy, but we're now catching up with this stuff, and I immediately want to talk about the new ride line that we got last Tuesday, as well as all the other separate cards for Step 5 that have been released or revealed this week, so we immediately going to catch up on everything. So, without any further ado, let's jump straight into this video and see what we see so far for Set 5. So, first off, I already teased a bit, we got a new ride line, you're probably already aware of this, which of course has a new starter in the likes of this Grade 0 by our road youth, Rohawa. And you might think to yourself, now, wasn't this supposed to be dual clans with the new ride lines and things? Well, the thing is, it looks to be like that the ride line itself is all single nation based, and then some of the support cards are dual nations. So in this case, this is a Stoicheia ride line, which is going to have a Stoicheia Dragon Empire support unit supporting this ride line. So, of course, we have the standard starter, which we immediately can skip over because it is the same as every other starter. So, next up, we've got the grade 1 of the ride line, which is Awakening from Slumber Rohawa. And this Rohawa has the ability Auto, when the unit's placed by riding on by road youth Rohawa, which is of course the starter, call up to one plant token to the back row center rearguard circle. So now we see that this ride line is introducing or reintroducing plant tokens to standard. And seeing this is a Stoicheia archetype, it's basically Neo Nectar in the new future of standard, which is kind of interesting because the plant tokens are identical in terms of value as the original plant tokens, and since they have the same name, this could interact in premium with the previous plant token support. Now, the question that I have is, as soon as they are the exact same type of plant token and we get a new plant token card for standard, are we allowed to use the old plant tokens in standard? Or are we only allowed to use this new type of plant token card? I know that might sound confusing, but I think that's the correct naming of it. So that's my question. As for now, I would say just keep it with the new token, as once we get more confirmation on Bushroad, we can hopefully try to maybe use the old ones in a tournament setting if you like the old artwork more. But besides that, it also has another new keyword which we've never seen before, which is glitter. And then it also states this card is glitter, which seeks the fire regardless. We can basically ignore that part. There's just some flavor text added to it. It basically has a glitter keyword, and the glitter keyword in itself doesn't necessarily do anything unless it specifically asks us to have a specific Vanguard or another unit with the glitter keyword to activate the glitter effect. And in this case, the glitter effect is just nothing. It just has the glitter keyword. And I know this sounds a bit confusing, but you will understand this more once we look at the support card, because if you look closely at the artwork, you see two different tech boxes. We have the skill text box, which is just a normal skill, and then we have the skill text box, which then highlights the glitter keyword, which basically shows us that the glitter effect is a different skill that only activates in a specific scenario. So moving on the ride line, we of course also have the grade 2 of the ride line, which in this case is the world 3000 years later Rohawa. And this grade 2 has the effect, although one unit placed on the Vanguard circle calls retire one of your rear guards and call up to 2 plant tokens to the rear guard circle. So essentially you can trade in one unit for 2 plant tokens, and as seen as the grade 1 of the ride line creates already one, you essentially can turn one plant token into 2 plant tokens to be more aggressive in the early game, which is nice and very reminiscent of the original plant token strategy of Neo Nectar. And of course it also has the glitter keyword, but again, no extra effect attached to the glitter keyword itself. So moving on to the grade 3 of the ride line, we have For Once Precious Thing Rohawa, and this unit has the effects Auto and Vanguard Circle once a turn. cost soulless 1, and call up the free plant tokens to the rearguard circle. So this can immediately create free plant tokens, and combining that with the grade 2, you essentially on turn 3 can have an entire board filled with plant tokens to just early rush without losing any cards from your hand. So you also have somewhat of a defensive stance here, which is kind of interesting as Venus can turbo out these plant tokens. But then it also has the effect, on Vanguard Circle, when this unit is attacked, retire 1 or more of your token units, and this unit gets power plus 5k until the end of the battle for each unit retired for this cost. So now we can use those plant tokens for a defensive strategy, because those tokens, which usually aren't really doing anything during your opponent's turn as they usually don't have intercept, now you can trade those off for shield value, which honestly is actually pretty decent, because the interesting thing about this skill is that it's not restricted once per turn. So if your opponent is poking you, you can essentially just sack 1 token and guard with it. Then for the second attack, sack another token and guard with it as well, and then sack another token for guard the third attack. So this is a very interesting combination of being aggressive in the early game, but then using those tokens for defensive stance instead of resources for other skills. Of course, that can change if we see more support cards that interact with tokens. And interestingly enough, we already have that in the direct support cards for Rohawa. But before we get to that, we also have once again the glitter keyword on this card, but yet again, like the grade 1 and the grade 2, it doesn't really do anything as it doesn't have a skill attached to the glitter keyword. Now if we take a look at the support cards, that is going to change, because the direct support card that we have is this grade 2 Drag Raider Girl of Flame Blossoms, Redelina. And Redelina has 2 effects, for which one is auto rearguard circle. If you do not have a Momoke token, cost counter plus 1 and call up to 1 Momoke token to the rearguard circle. So this can create a token that has more effects. So this is another way to flood the board, just like the right line that can create plant tokens. But before we take a look at the token, let's first take a look at her secondary effect, which is a glitter effect. And this will showcase how the glitter mechanic actually works. So glitter Rohawa. Active if your Vanguard is a glitter with Rohawa in its card name. So in order to activate this effect, you not only need to have a Vanguard with the glitter effect, but also with the name Rohawa. So essentially, this is a more restrictive name-based skill. And what I mean with that is, if you go back to some of the V-Series support, and mainly Jira, we had a lot of cards that were, if your Vanguard has Chronojet in the name, or if your Vanguard has Altma in the name. This is essentially the same, because we need a Vanguard with Rohawa in its name, but on top of that, it also needs to have the glitter keyword. And this makes those skills a bit more restrictive. A good example of this is Premium. Because in Premium, you could stride on top of Rohawa, and you would still have the Rohawa name, but because your strides don't have the glitter keyword, this skill will never activate on a stride turn, because your Vanguard doesn't fulfill the condition of this keyword. So that's basically how this glitter keyword works, where it's, in my opinion, a secondary condition to meet the requirement of activating the skill, unlike the just your Vanguard needs to have X name. So what does this skill actually do? Well, essentially she has then the effect on a rearguard circle. When this unit attacks, cost Soul Blast 1, choose one of your token units in the same column as this unit, and this unit gets the power of that unit until the end of battle. So this basically gets more power if you have the correct Vanguard. And you might think to yourself, well, what's the point of that skill? Because your plant tokens are only 5k. And we also have the Momoke token, and we already saw, if you saw in the image here, then you will also know that the Momoke token only has 5k base, so there isn't a lot of power you're gonna get for Soul Blast 1. However, there's more to it if we take a look at the Momoke token itself. So let's take a look at the Momoke token, and we see here, of course, the grade 0 5k base token, but it has some nice little tricks up its sleeve. So first off, it has the effect, act on rearguard circle once a turn, cost retire one or more of your other rearguards, and this unit gets power plus 5k until the end of turn for each unit retired for this cost. So you can basically feed this dragon a lot of units to increase its power. And since we are using it in a deck that create tokens, you can essentially sack off all those plant tokens into this unit, then this unit can gain a bunch load of power, and then while your grade 2 that created this token attacks, then she will also gain the power. So essentially, you can have 3 tokens on the field, which your Vanguard can create, by the way, then you call the grade 2. The grade 2 will create this token in the same column, so you have this one column with these 2 units. Then you sack those 3 tokens to this new Momoke token, which gains 15k power, so it's a 20k unit. And then once your grade 2 attacks, she also gains the 20k power, so she becomes a 30k attacker. But you might think to yourself, why you're not boosting with this? Well, that's because of the other effect of this token, which is Glitter Rohawa, which again means your Vanguard needs to be Rohawa with the glitter keyword, and then activates this skill. Continues a rearguard circle. If you have a unit with Redelina, which is the grade 2 that creates this token, in its card name, in the same column as this unit can attack from the back row. So we essentially have a 4th attack. So you can call the grade 2, create this token, sacrifice a bunch of units into this token, then this token can easily attack for 20k from the back row, and then your grade 2 in front of it will attack for 30k, and then you have your side column and your Vanguard that also swings in that same turn. You can do that basically with only having 1 card, because your Vanguard, you always have access to it because it's your right line, and you only need the grade 2 to enable this whole combo. It will cost you at least 1 counterblast and potentially 2 soul. The soul for the gain of power of the grade 2 and probably the soul to create the 3 tokens that you want to sacrifice into this unit. Of course, you don't have to sacrifice tokens because you can also sacrifice normal units, but to not waste a lot of card advantage in your hand, probably going with tokens is probably the more ideal situation. And honestly, that's a pretty interesting combo, and that's the main game plan of this ride line that we see so far. And honestly, it looks very promising. It's 4 attacks with decent numbers. You don't need a lot of key pieces like what we see in the Overdress deck, where you need a lot of specific units. In this case, you need only 1. It does mean that if you don't draw that 1 card, the deck doesn't really do a lot right now, but it could change once we see more support within set 5, which probably will focus on these newer ride lines instead of generic support. But we could be wrong here. Now, talking about that, we also have more support revealed this week that are more generic-ish, but could also hint towards what the new ride lines of the other nations are going to do. So first up, we have a new grade 1, which is Stepping Calyx Salvia, which is for Stoicheia, and her effect is, although when units placed in the rearguard circle, if your Vanguard is grade 3 or greater, you may call plant token to the rearguard circle. So more plant token support. This could work well with whatever strategy you want to go with the new Rohawa. This could be used in the early game to be more aggressive, but this could also help you to mitigate the soul cost for your Momoke token, because you can also use this to create the sacrifices you need to empower the token. So this opens up a different line of play as well. But of course, it's also generic, so this could potentially work for Magnolia as well to put more bodies on the board. So who knows, this might also be really good for Magnolia and maybe even Zorga, but I'm not so sure if that's actually the case. Now, talking about Zorga, this is another great one which might be very interesting for Zorga, as we have Sticky String Mutant Acutia Sticky. I don't know how they managed to do it. We went from Dragon to Emperor, and now we have Sticky. Great job, Bushrod. You never cease to amaze me. But in terms of the ability of this grade 1, we have Act on Rearguard Circle. Once a turn, cause counter +1 and retire 2 other rearguards. Draw a card, and this unit gets power +5k until the end of turn. So you might think to yourself, this ability isn't that great. You're using 1 counterblast, sacrifice 2 units, and then you draw a card to gain 5k power. So counter +1 to draw is fine, but sacrificing 2 units for 5k power sounds a bit underwhelming. The thing is, in combination with Zorga, this is actually really interesting and could be very powerful, because Zorga in the previous support wave got a grade 3 that resurrects itself for free on the board. But because it's a grade 3, you cannot intercept with it. So if we combine it with this grade 1, we can sacrifice those 2 targets, then get the 5k for free, and then during the same turn we just sacrifice them, they can recall themselves for free once we alchemagic or use an order, and the dragons come back onto the board. And as soon as they have on place effects, we can reload their effects turn after turn after turn, thanks to this grade 1. Now, I'm not saying this is going to be the go-to strategy for Zorga, because the counterblast cost can be a bit heavy for Zorga, but if we see more support, this might work quite well. And also keep in mind, because it is in Stoicheia and we have the new right line with Rohawa, we can also use the tokens. And we basically sacrifice 1 token that replaces 5k power of the token into this unit, and then we lose another token, but having a draw power engine on top of it might be worth the sacrifice, especially if we need to see the grade 2 that we just talked about. So this card could honestly see some play. Now, moving on to some generic more support cards, we have a new Dark Stage unit in the likes of this grade 2, Steam Reaper Nania, and Nania has the effect auto. When this unit intercepts, if your soul has 5 or more cards, this unit gets shield plus 10k until the end of the battle. So it's a 15k interceptor, nothing really special. It's a 9k base. We have already better shield options, so I think once again this will be a card that nobody's gonna bat an eye on. Then follow up, we've got a new Rampgate card in the likes of this grade 2, Heavy Armored Panzer, which has the effect continues a Vanguard circle. If your order zone has a set order, this unit gets boost. So it's similar to the, I believe, the docking something set order that gives all your units boost. This is essentially the same thing, but then in itself, so it's only one unit. And I don't know if it's worth to play this card in any other deck within the Brandgate, even though every Brandgate mechanic uses a set order. But maybe this synergizes with the new Brandgate ride line, because I assume it's very likely that that new ride line is also going to use some type of set order. So we have to wait and see if this actually has some purpose or is absolutely nothing and just pack filler. Now, follow up on that, we have a new Keter Sanctuary card in the likes of this grade 1, Life-Saving Angel Digriel. And Digriel has the effect auto and backward rearguard circle. When your other unit in the same column as this unit stand by a card's effect, you may return this unit to your hand. So that's a bounce effect, which isn't very new to Vanguard, and I can see some use of it because a lot of the cards within Keter Sanctuary have some type of reset ability, like the whole Bastion archetype, but even Hexor Absorbers have some ability to reset units. I only think that the Blaster ride line doesn't really have that accessible, unlike just random effects that can maybe reset your units. But I don't know if it's actually really useful because you have a grade 1 that bounces itself, which means it's safe from harm for control effects. And you can use her shield value, but it's only 5k shield. Like if it's back in the V series where you had 10k shield, maybe it's worth it. But right now I'm not super convinced, but who knows, maybe this synergizes very nicely with the new ride line that activates skills once cards bounce back. Like, that could definitely be a thing, so we have to wait and see if this synergizes with that ride line. And then lastly, we have 2 new cards for Dragon Empire, which are kind of interesting, as we have this grade 1 Acute Dragon Aroa Fierce, and Aroa Fierce has the effect auto and rearguard circle. When this unit attacks or boosts, costs Soul Blast 1, and this unit gets power plus 5k for each of your other grade 1 or less rearguards until the end of battle. So this could be a sizable booster or attacker if you flood the board with a lot of grade 1s. And this could work for Eugene, because a lot of the good cards of Eugene's are grade 1s. And this could also open up the path for a very early aggressive deck, where you just right on turn 1, if you go second, flood the board with all grade 1s and grade 0s and just start attacking your opponent. This could be an option, but this could also maybe see a new direction with the new potential Dragon Empire ride line. And interesting enough, it does synergize with the new Momoke token as well, because the Momoke token is a grade 0, and if we call the grade 2 in a Dragon Empire deck, she can create a token, and then that will synergize with this grade 1. It is an option, but I'm not saying it's a good option, it's an option. And then lastly, we have a new grade 3 for Dragon Empire, which is Drailing Dragon Barrio Dignil. And this grade 3 has the effect on a rearguard circle. At the end of the battle, this unit attack costs, put this unit into your soul, choose one of your rearguards, and it gets power plus 5k until the end of this turn. So it's a different version of the grade 3 dino from set 1, where that gave a critical to your Vanguard, and in this case, you give 5k power to a rearguard. It does generate soul, so this could combine with the grade 1 that uses soul, so you can fuel that card, and this could work with Eugene or any other deck that requires some soul. I'm not sure if this is going to see some play. Maybe it does, maybe it doesn't. It depends on what the new ride line is going to do and what their strategy is. We basically have to wait and see, because it's too early to say, because we know we're going to get brand new ride lines, which also means brand new strategies. So it's harder to gauge if these generic weird-ass cards actually are useful or not. It's basically too soon to say right now. But one thing I do want to say is that we basically saw the very first dual nation card in the form of the grade 2 Dragon Empire Star KO girl that creates the token. My issue, however, is with that card is that what is actually the point of her being a dual nation card? Because the entire value of that combo of the grade 2 with the token is that you have the grade 3 as a Vanguard. Because if you don't have the grade 3 as a Vanguard, she doesn't gain extra power of the token power, and the token cannot attack from the back row. Basically, you only have a unit that for the cost of a counterblast can create a 5k token behind her, and that token can eat other units to empower itself. to basically you're gonna make a stronger column. That's it. And because the grade 3 of the Redelina is a Stoicheia unit, you can only use that whole combo in Stoicheia. So her being Dragon Empire doesn't really do a lot. Unless you can use her in some situation where a Dragon Empire deck can benefit from being able to flood the board and maybe sacrifice units into one unit for a stronger column. If you can maybe give it a guard restrict, or you could restand rear guards regardless if they have the restand ability themselves or not. And I don't know if any of the Dragon Empire nations has an effect like that. I mean, you could synergize with Tachikaze because you can eat your rear guards into the token, and then most of those Tachikaze cards can resurrect themselves when they're being retired. So that could synergize a bit with it. Dragon Empire can maybe benefit it in premium because Dragon Empire usually has issue with flooding the board. This case, it creates a token, so it's a 2-in-1 deal. But I'm not so sure how much that's useful and if it actually will come up. I might be a bit too soon. Maybe we see more support cards that interact with her more in a Dragon Empire sense. But I hope that the following dual nation cards are actually useful in the other nation that isn't restricted to the right line boss unit that's only fixed to one nation. But we have to wait and see till the next support wave. But with that said, let me know in the comments down below what you guys think of these new support cards that we saw this week. What do you think of the new right line? What do you think of the dual nation support? What do you think of the glitter mechanic that basically limits the power of these cards in premium precisely, and maybe to some extent in standard, but I think it's mainly done with premium in mind. And of course the generic support cards that we saw later this week as well. Let me know all your thoughts in the comments section down below. Now, on the other side note, outside of what this video is talking about, there might or might not be a difference in the quality of the camera right now. I'm not sure. I'm using this camera for the first time because I have a brand new camera and I don't know how it's gonna look. Maybe I'm screwed up with the settings and it looks awful, but I'm currently in the process of upgrading a lot of stuff here, so you might suddenly see some changes in the quality of some of the equipment, maybe different scenery, like maybe this is gonna change, but that's a big maybe. But I'm basically in the process of upgrading a lot of stuff behind the scenes as well. So some of it you might suddenly see some changes here and there, but that's because I'm screwing around with what's happening behind the scene. Let me know if you guys dig the new quality, if there's even a change. I don't know. Let me know if it is a change. But yeah, that explains if you thought to yourself, hey, he looks different today, or at least the video quality looks a bit different today. And also, if I'm looking like in a weird angle, that's also because I'm adjusting to this new camera, which in the old camera I didn't have a screen where I could see myself, and now I can, and it's right above the camera. So if I look at myself, I'm probably looking up, whereas need to look here instead of there, but that's still a mental knob that I have to turn while getting used to this stuff. But with that said, I'm going to give a huge shout out to my Patreon supporters over at patreon.com/RankedInsider. You guys are amazing. If you do want to support the channel or everything that's happening on the channel, you can simply go to patreon.com/RankedInsider and become a patron today. But with that said, I've been Mr. Time Leap, and I'll see you guys in the next one!